Hello? All right. Good evening. Thank you, Positive Knowledge. I'm Cecil Giscombe, and with Jane Gregory, I curate the fall season of the Holloway Poetry Series. This evening, we're pleased to have Ronaldo Wilson with us from UC Santa Cruz. He'll be introduced by Brandon Callender. Ronaldo's reading will be preceded by a brief reading by Aura Maru, a graduate student in the Complet Department, introduced by Tricia Peck. Ms. Peck, would you come to you?
Hello. Okay. It's a great joy for me to introduce Aura Maru, pen name Aurelia Kohojakaru, who comes to us from Moldova in the former Soviet Union, where, quoting from her current project, "Given the amount of blood in the wave, we all had to swim as little anti-communists." Aura is the author of the recently published book of poems, Duty Free, written in her native Romanian tongue. And as Cecil mentioned, she is currently a second-year graduate student here in the university's Comparative Literature Department. It has been a delight to witness the evolution of Aura's current project, My Marks, Your Marks, A History of Smacking, in which readers from East and West, North and South, Self and Self, are invited, or rather put, into a trans-Siberian cattle car where, poetically arrested from habituated tongues and ideologies, we make a revolutionary practice. Smacking, like any good kiss, is an experimental work whose hybrid prose poetics sickles its way through the silence of imposed historical and perhaps academic borders. While the violent intimacy of sickling carves unexpected syntactic breaking and syllabic merging, a theoretical distance is partly maintained by lyrical strokes and wordplay that perhaps only a non-native and unassimilated English language ear is free to produce. The poetic persona is not sorry, however, for the single-eyed double vision of that distant intimacy that results, but embraces the opportunity to dance naked in the spaces between multiple geographies, identities, and voices. Please join me in welcoming Aura Maru.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Tricia, for such a generous reading of my work. I cannot even begin to express what a joy and honor it is to be reading in the Holloway series as the opening act of Ronaldo Wilson's reading, and what a great encouragement it is to be standing here and reading from my juvenile work in the English language. I will be reading from the project that Tricia just mentioned, Your Marks, My Marks, A History of Smacking. And I have to mention that this project began in a wonderful workshop conducted by Cecil Giscombe last semester. And then, depending on time constraints, I will read 2 or 3 poems. Roughly speaking, when you stop hearing about Marx and start hearing about vacuums. Your Marks, My Marks, A History of Smacking.
Sorry, I have no idea. I'm so sorry. Try again. You don't have to get too close to it.
Okay. Is it now? It's okay? Okay. Your Marks, My Marks, A History of Smacking. Who am I? To whom do I owe my voice? I am no voice. I sickle my way through silence. My grandfather, Nikolai, was a communist. His black long Volga in his village with his arms. Click, click, photographs of overproducing rabbits. Clack, clack, forming the eternal fir trees and the now abandoned hospital. The magician makes cherry trees with different types of fruit on every branch and puts together a swing for us out of his own crutches. By the end, fingers contorted, contracted. Did anyone ask him in the 90s? In his wheelchair, his granddaughters sometimes in the back, he drove to the store to get the sour square dark bread. But communism, you don't talk. That's for forgetting, not asking. 65, blood exploded in his head, leaving him with only one word: certainly. I had no idea about the risks of pole vaulting. I took in those early deaths as a sign of nothing. My grandfather Trofim was colored out of his youth into the gulag with his brothers. I, the trio chanted in the rhythm of enemy of state mass production. His train and his school being principle, his poetry, his language, and to bring back one smoky icon. Siberian night, always during the days, sleeping away his tiredness. Memorize his joke, emulate the shape of his hair, giggle at his request to eat soup at boiling point. Helping in the garden, the hilt of the hoe my height. Nothing to do with all that strength, a game of curling his way through the 90s. His story was for me, and although I was old enough, I was too young to have it. 85 goes away reciting. In the West, I am in theory. It is a taboo to be a Marxist there. Can I here be a Marxist? I have no idea what capitalism is. Is my voice capitalist? The pressure of the I is something that I too want removed, mostly because I want to get away from me, because I don't know much about me other than I want to get away. But just how Marxist I could be if I ask starts the music of a meat mallet. The I goes out of the room as a roast pig with a ping pong ball in my mouth. In the middle of the road, to the newcomer, the pieces of the wall in Berlin emerge like cardboard figures. A splatter of graffiti spray in your face. One starts thinking about the hands of all those crocheters of barbed wire. My dear, even the West has its East and West, and even the West of the West has its East and West, and even the West of the West of the West. This is either foamy thinking, or half-lies of xenon, or viral xenophilia. Walking along it, I thought I could remove the wall like a Band-Aid. And then all of a sudden, it's like a whitewashed room with no politics, except for occasional love notes from the neo-Nazis. Endless S-Bahn trains, numbed, leisure reading Marx in the Penguin series. There is only one way. Must then itself be destroyed in theory and in practice. Death, agonies, bloody birth. Own it, for God's sake, own it. Ode to Marx's Beard. Karl Marx's Beard is on Facebook. To connect with Karl Marx's Beard, sign up for Facebook today. Karl Marx's Beard on Twitter. I stand in #solidarity with striking #fast food global workers. Karl Marx's beard stream on SoundCloud. Hear the world sound. Karl Marx's beard urban dictionary, lumbersexual. There seems to be serious cause for concern in Karl Marx's beard. Various labs are trying to calculate the precise amount of privilege. H.G. Wells shocked the Bolsheviks by blaspheming against Marx's beard. He said it's so godlike it just can't be unintentional, thus subjecting this greatest revolutionary tool of modern times to the villous question of agency. Lyotard himself has been seen stroking Karl Marx's beard. He has a replica made of steel wool. To beard or not to beard at cracked.com. As Lenin said at the time, as Lenin said in his latest contribution to the subject, as Lenin said addressing the problems, if, as Lenin said, hushed, Papa's figure burgeons in the wrong place, wrong time, wrong brain, all for me, and it's plastic. From inside the book, Papa smacks me on the face with the book. Nice to meet you, finally, Papa. I had no idea someone could cite you. This history is a history of smacking. Starts Grandma Fire with yellowing Lenin poster, and here it is on the wall of an American's office. By what ways, how come, where to? Shines the image of mastermind at a loss, smack countries short circuit. There parades a young woman holding balloons for the Soviet. Here occupies a couple in red bench. Parting lips for Brezhnev deep. And deepened he deep as to see in his brain Marx, Engels, Lenin, and Stalin train boarding under arrest. East, west, 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 east, west. I am not sorry for my single-eye double vision. If we cannot speak the same tongue, we should kiss. I have often wondered why you have so many. This is holy, that is holy, that is holy too. Whereas I wear my little god like a fox fur on my neck and my shoulder. So I classify you, ample, fair, enduring, capable, rich. I put you into the Trans-Siberian cattle car on my one-track blood. In the dark, I read your marks and you read my marks. We make revolutionary practice. What is your favorite position in relation to the various existing? Put on your spinal plaster cast and dance for me. Someone wearing Lenin as a mask is kissing me. This marks the end of our little. Now moving on to the shorter poems. Hoover versus Raketa. In this country, vacuuming is like flying a Saturn V. The first time I used an American vacuum, I knew why you guys had won the Cold War. Nothing like the Soviet ones, which we still used in the 90s. A horizontal sausage-like baby blue aluminum timid canister suction high-pitched machine suggestively called Raketa, with an eternally fragile hose so that you had to look for the tear that was like a new small breath and strangle it with tape. And how is this massive thing supposed to go into the corners? How do I not hit the walls? And is it better to keep it vertical or vacuum at an angle? These are questions I still don't dare to ask. Sometimes pressing that button, I feel like Putin. So I've become terribly aware of the vacuuming patterns of my neighbors.
I hear Hoover by Hoover, I see a matrix of little bulbs. We've tamed these insects together, eating their dusty pollen with their little mouths, a shapeless choir, a congregation of pistons. I can read Murray Spangler's DNA in the combination of switches. I found a way to you, a form of my hoovering neighbors. When the rents go up, we should just take off. Apparently my country still makes space-adapted wine for the Russian astronauts bathing right now in zero gravity. Sometime soon, the cargo ship, which they lost control of recently, in its wild spin, will fall out of the orbit and burst over Kazakhstan. I like to think it'll be raining Moldovan wine. Neues Museum Berlin Goodbye Party. Room 1. I had gone there specifically to glance once more at Nefertiti's empty eye socket, and then looking into the other to feel she is so alive. This time she wasn't. She was just blankly staring into Isis Lactan's chopped off breast, who was gently cupping with her right hand that space, empty, fertile, luscious. Room 2. An Egyptian lad was treading through the cranes he was supposedly breeding, and it looked like he was feeding them his own hip. In the Book of the Dead, they were just weighing someone's heart. I kept a German-English dictionary and was learning in translation things like the netherworld. Room 3. At this point there appeared a winged goddess. Struck by the hues in the sandstone she was made of, something like a golden marble cake, I did not even notice that her wings were missing. Her flying was awfully scattered, and besides, she was sitting. Room 4. In the middle of the room, the Berlin green head, made of schist, sporting absolute godly smoothness. I could have kissed the back of his head. And, of course, as expected, by all means, noseless. Now, the issue of the missing noses certainly poses serious questions for both art historians and fragmentologists. The former preoccupied with the heads, the latter with the noses, and where the hell they all go. Did you know that in 1986 the Statue of Liberty got a nose job? Did you know that in 2009 someone broke Silvio Berlusconi's nose by throwing a statue at him? Room 5. Much traveled in realms of Californian gold, Heinrich Schliemann returns to Russia. And from Russia to finding Troy, it is just a matter of space. He has some arguments over gold with the Ottoman government. Was that double ring of slabs the exact double ring of slabs in the story? Did they mirror exactly? Was that Agamemnon or a storyless body? If not Troy, then how do you mean the remains of a beautiful ceiling? The Greek court. A man talks on the phone with his granddaughter, 10 months old. Kannst du mich hören? Opa ist hier. Space is made from jigsaw intersection of original ruins and new walls. The architect's name is Chipperfield. Through the glass ceiling, a lot of sun comes in. I look up. I do what I'm supposed to do in this context. Because, you see, I'm just not content with no content. You assemble me, you break my lines, but you don't touch. Tschüss, City of four-layered walls, choose Nefertiti, Isis, choose winged goddess and Egyptian lad, choose smooth green head and Schliemann, choose. And finally, the enigma of arrival. There is much to say about departures and nothing about arrivals. It is always over by the time it begins. There's a fact switch. You've arrived, and there's no enigma. From here onward, it is either news from home bulimia or starving for content. But America was in you before you were in America. Jeans arrived, people sneakily got them. In the 80s, the jeans fever was still giving us chills. Coca-Cola arrived, Snickers and Mars arrived. Jim Carrey and Chuck Norris arrived via a detour to Moscow, where the characters were all dubbed by a single infamous nasal voice. There was a day when I watched the Twin Towers, doing my math homework, eating spaghetti, barely chewing and swallowing. I saw those buildings for the first and the last time. It was the best of films and the worst of realities. I wonder if I've been anywhere but America since then. There are gently circling U-Hauls outside my window, turning through points of extreme. There's a shape to the way they bring my stuff, the shape of a carrying pole for the passport, the speak of the shape of the rite of passage from language to language. There are bilingual Romanian-Russian conversations in Moldova, ping-pong shaped. One says, "Speak human language." The other says, "You beast." And who will give up? Who will be weak and will step to the other side melting? And there is a curved staircase, always ending in English. I slide down and painfully land on my butt. There is conjugation of being across visas, gear stick person. Cushioned by the only possible configuration, this hand extends. There is a river, and there is another river. All I know is I swim. I've nothing to exchange, yet I borrow. One arm tricks the other to stay. My brother, my stranger-in-law, I am nothing. I am something for your language to pick. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
In an interview describing the process of composing his first book, Narrative of the Brown Boy and the White Man, Ronaldo Wilson says that in order to better get in touch with the unconscious, he would write straight out of waking up in order to feel, as he put it, the most open, even vulnerable, like a baby waking up fresh to the world, still groggy but hungry to communicate. Last year I made a recording of myself reading his collection, and as I listened to it last night, my body was touched by a dreamy humiliation. In my bed, I was no longer the disembodied reader we idealize in this room, my intellect no longer incisive, but fumbling, flinching, gagging. I am humbled back into my body. I repeat again the words, "Oh no, not that, not that," and begin again to recompose myself in my words for this evening. To say the content of his three collections is difficult would be an understatement. Wilson's work is lit with scenes of violence and humiliation, inflicted, sought after, and pondered, and has been called a poetics of the grotesque. But even more, it is a poetics of relentless embodiment that hurls itself into and against form, genre, racial, and sexual being. As one speaker from the most recent collection, Farther Traveler, asks, "How do you say I am a black? How do you say that being a black poet is how I am also an Asian and gay poet? How do you say I am not interested in anything but the sky at one moment, and the complications of intentionally wanting to soil a bathroom wall or hack up on someone's face in the next? Meaning, if Wilson's is a poetics of fluidity, it is one that never leaves the body far behind. Its fluidity seems composed from the very bodily secretions themselves, what they communicate groggily and sometimes reluctantly, the unbleached traces of desire and brutality, the blood of the homicide before it has been washed away. Even in works so given to spectacle, we are moved by the subtle inflections of Wilson's language, the way words and images lightly ghost one another, lending the text its dense associative power. Wilson's writing is as incisive as it is impressionistic, allowing him to capture the sideways movements of memory and trauma, and to do so with so light a hand that we may register their eruptive force before we perhaps do their connective power. It is, after Roland Barthes, the pleasure of the text, and at times unnerving given its close proximity to pain. To read Wilson's work is to be overcome not only with these stark, broken unities, but also by his writerly gift that seems to inflict and repress meaning with one stroke, while quietly giving us the resources to make sense of it. This means we learn how to hurt at the very same time that we learn how to move towards something like sense, and to feel again these twinned impulses every time we revisit one of his books. I'm thinking of one moment from Narrative of the Brown Boy, where the character reflects upon a collage he's made, joining Venus and Serena Williams to images of old men filleting one another. Considering his project, the boy, and this is a quote, feels that his mind is one confused object that pulses about unknowing, wound up a note towards itself with no answers but the need to cut, suspend, look, paste, cover, and tape. Each piece locks up to the next, making sense only in his own mind. Sometimes, he thinks, if he could bring these shots together, things would start to make sense, the whole of them becoming more like a finished puzzle. Although the speaker aspires towards some later moment of cohesion, he also suggests that whatever sense he might find in them must come from his own mind. It is not something that could be handed to him top down. It is a collaborative process and asks that we draw from his vast repertoire of memories, dreams, and triggers, that we learn new ways of remembering, that they might lend us some new mode of travel, some new pose of unbecoming, one which may take us outside of ourselves, yes, but which we belatedly find reflects upon and transforms our own ways of knowing, and how they move us outwards into the world of human and non-human relation. After having read all of Wilson's work, I revisit this moment just minutes before sleep to spot a commonality across all three collections. The many speakers trying to arrange loss, trying between violence and microaggressions, between the self that is given and the self that is made, to endlessly recompose themselves. One speaker from Farther Traveler asks, where will the pieces of this narrative coalesce? And I think if we can ask this also, if this where is also a who, if it's the reader's job to bring these fragments together conclusively, is it possible for us to know more than the speaker and to know it better? As the careful recipients of Wilson's poetry, is it even within our power to give the speakers back some sense, some semblance of a whole, to diagnose and make known the inner workings of their mind, as if it were a thing to be mastered in the margins of the page? I want to return then to the words which a few nights ago were to begin my introduction, to say that tonight I have the pleasure and the impossibility of introducing our Holloway poet for the evening, Ronaldo V. Wilson, Professor of Poetry, Fiction, and Literature, and core faculty of the PhD Creative Critical Concentration in the Literature Department at UC Santa Cruz. Wilson is the co-founder of Black Took Collective and was awarded the 2007 Cave Canem Poetry Prize for his book, The Narrative of the Brown Boy and White Man, and the Thomas Gunn Award and Asian American Literacy Award in Poetry for his second collection, Poems of the Black Object. His recent book, Farther Traveler, is a most fantastic addition to Wilson's oeuvre and has been hailed by Fred Moten as an erotic history of loss that is, therefore, an erotic history of finding. Please join me now in warmly welcoming to the stage Ronaldo Wilson.
So good. Thank you so much. I love that. No, it's so good because it helps me to think about the work and to hear all of your analysis. And I think the question of the who and the what. I'm just getting ready to do like a regular reading, but that's not going to be the case. But I think your introduction was so wonderful that it. So to help have me reroute myself. I'm going to start and thank Cecil and Jeffrey and Lynn, everyone for having me here. I'm really excited to be reading here. I'm an alum, so it's exciting to always be back here. I studied poetry here years ago. I'm just gonna sort of walk through. I've been doing some readings. I'm just gonna stop talking and start working. Next to you. Left and ecstasy, darling animal, feel so next to you. There's a will when you hold my hand, next to you, ecstasy. Darling, I'm loyal, left to bear my wings with your wings. Left in ecstasy, darling, animal, I won't rest with you. La 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 la. So sad. La 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 la. La 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 la. Jesus. Clicked his heels instead. Said his name Bojangles and he danced a lick. Across the sound, stands a bell that stands for what you got. These are the logics the logician tells you. What a suited denim. You're inspired, though you hate to be suited in denim. It's so presumptuous. Reporting the long memory, isn't it? The tug of memories pulled back before you could even think about consciousness. You wonder, how could I be next to so much music? You're under it, aren't you? You're gutted. You're slayed. You are infrequently misunderstood, taken for bay, breaks, boondocks, capture some version of identities. You're encouraged to watch Blackish until you realize that bird does cast a shadow, it's a pigeon. Gidget's very tiny like Twiggy, and you want to be like Kate Moss. Tiny models, memory organized into stanzaic units, compartmentalized. This is the skill set, it's worth gold, diamonds. Not part of the performance. It needs its own shape. Can you turn that off? Capaciousness like that room I performed in the other night, a young museum. rows and rows of seats. There we were, three brown bodies looking about. How the chairs were. One said I hated it, one didn't notice. One liked the angular configurations, the symmetricality. When she looks out in the white chairs, what does she see? She wanted to say, I hate the white people. What do I see when I look at the white people across? But she cathected to a chair. It was like a stack, rows and rows, pencils. I try to fight the style, but the style.
Remember this part? Shoot you so bad, the dick's hard. I'm staring at the nigga in the men's stall. He winking at me. Oh, what's on, y'all? Shout out my niggas, Yuki Button 10 dog. Airbrush tank top straight from the mall. Some of these niggas look sleazy, yo. Very curl, looking real easy, yo. Funny little bastards, that what we are. Bet you didn't know I played the guitar. New Jack City, remember this part?
Where you are poisoned, dig it out. Where you have a dream, you are where you want to be held. Open a window. Where you wash, open yourself. Drain. On a wire, drops in wind, sound like waterflies from tread. On the curve of a road, you look into redwood, hope no rope. Alone you run. What you get through a screen, a bird on a pole, on this asphalt mountain of mist. What you forget, what you forge. A muscle you oxygenate. The rain quiets, you soften your eyes. A gecko camouflage as a leaf in a forest. You hurl it in the stream, voice thrown into the dance. Now can I use the word niggardly? Now can I use the word niggardly? I hate reading, actually. I can't stand reading poems. It's so boring. I'm stopping. This might be more successful. The word block is very close to black. The word block contains the word lock. The word black contains the word lack. William Pope Bell describes the importance of black as a way of being that could replace the very being itself. Displacement of the self as enactment. He argues that identity is inscribed upon a lack. And he plays with the tension of thinking about the relationships that coexist between the hypersexualization of the black male, violated, presented, remembered, recalled, its replication of it in a series of conceptual performances that lead not to transparent understanding of getting it or being read, managed for your need, your maintenance, but instead of multiply split dichotomy, it's being suspended at the point of capture as a whole. Which for me represents a formal mode of inquiry I slip into, or at least follow to, or move through this position, engaging with a space through which art and art making allows. I bought a journal, or rather a journal was bought for me. It's for a moment or two painful to think of buying when one has been bought or sold, or the threat of this persistent long memory exists. Memory sometimes manifests in the random form of critique and correction. But of course, no matter what you do, someone will hover over your shoulder at expected, unexpected moments, and you, at some point, no doubt, will be corrected. In yoga today, you notice this correction where the hips were seen to not totally open, and the teacher asked you to open your hips wider. But this was before you weren't ready to do so, because you did not feel like shifting for someone else in your own body, in your own mind, not open to open in your own way within the space of the yoga instructor's desire. Do you ever feel disproportionately rushed in a line? So much so that the last thing the whites behind you want, you're often the only one in these lines, is for you to slip out a blue card and to swipe for some small loaf of this or that, a tiny salad, lavender dish soap, or sometimes something else otherwise gluten-free. At least for that second, your time that they think is theirs. In the end, you decide that you will exercise your slowly developing breathing technique to take it all in, to drop your shoulders and to go even slower into the positions at your own pace. You sign your name with a fat plastic pen on the screen deliberately and think about opening up each letter to their fullest, despite the person's raging impatience building behind you. The act of writing is akin to dance. Fuck you, fuck off, fuck all. The move from the body is also akin to the air pushing out of my mouth when I'm running. The act is very far away from the image I tell myself to recall, the light when I soften my focus, which means to tighten my eyes with muscles that allow me to stare without blinking, causing the light to radiate outward in streaks, shards of it fracturing from the center of the bulb so that the light is akin to a star flashing inside a room. The streaks remind me of the bright white marks on the standing dark's feathered body holding cake in its beak at the deck overlooking the harbor at Aldo's. When the teacher says focus on the smallest speck on the carpet or the thread on the towel, I see Baldo's sweaty black trash bag that de-scrunches next to me on the rubber mat in the hall room. Picker, what? Later, I think, are my students closer to some pre-writing, some primordial scene, some kind of insistent feeling, an impossible zone? Or are they just lost? Block is close to plank and plywood. I know very little about cut wood, but I think of 2x4s as field weapons spiked with nails, or balsa wood as disappointing when it cracks. Lightness of package wings, planes, sealed in plastic, snapped together into the grooves before flight. The planes were as delicate as the leaf in my journal, a white leaf from some tree I do not know, and the invitations I have to refuse are as ephemeral as my thinking while taking a nap. I'm running away, drifting away from the subject of the self, maybe as a means to get closer to it, sleep engaged with enactment. Block is related to bag. Popel puts one over his head for the cover of his retrospectives catalog. I want to go to the water garden today and relax, get fun, but I have to instead go to a party. I might say that I have flown in late and that I cannot attend. My body is overtired. I will say, and the work week will start soon. What do I seek? I look for something close to love and realize I can find it for $35 and get filled. Maybe I feel fulfilled. I am a poet. I am not a therapist. I am a black pot. I am a pot that you may not want to enter. Or you may want to in the end, but ultimately there will be something of the recognizable that is fixed. A body, though, through which you will want to remember or to think, my hope is that I'll go.
What you did in the moment was suspicious when you stopped. What you did in the moment was suspicious when you stopped. What you did in the moment was suspicious when you stopped. What you did in the moment was suspicious when you stopped. What you did in the moment was so suspicious. What you did in the moment was so suspicious. What you did in the moment was so suspicious.
or it gets you prices up. You know that song. You should not be clapping it up so whack. Try to get it. I'm gonna wrap hard time spreading just like the quotient. Patience, bitches wanna know why I durate. That's time. I'm freestyling, maneuvering around the impossible situation, kinda like a cut the sexist. I am sometimes wandering across the terrain with a beat, kinda like a tenses moment, tensile, it's crusty. My eyes are sleeping so deliberately because I'm drawing without imperception. I have no way back or a way to solve it. The struggle in finding the beat meter is so tiring. You must understand, cause hard times spread just like the flu. I hate beats and reading rhymes and waiting. I hate love, desire, unless it's broken, it's cracked my vision. So I have all of the people, not OD. Do not think I can't charge or swipe what I want, cause I have no. That's alright. I like doing this better than reading. It's more entertaining. I am, after all, here to entertain you. I am, after all, here to read my poems. I have been brought to this planet to pursue meaning. This meaning is not quotidian. This meaning is holistic. This meaning is, after all, the part of the fracture that you haven't discovered. I have, after all, thought about this deployment as in freestyling, as in going off the dome. I am, after all, lecturing you. I am, after all, at the lectern. I am, after all, not particularly turned on, but I am, after all, electric. Not the field of which I understand, but the ion's radiation around meaning. There's a distance between that voice. So, I was so, whatever did at that moment was so. I wish for a moment I had a friend, but I found one. Not you exactly, but this story. I made these songs in a garage in Pasadena. The white van. The Zodi's parking lot is not empty because it's circled by a wobbling old white man who shuffles in the dark, cooling heat of the Sacramento summer. And this is the old Florin Road. Anyone from Sacramento? Southside, Florin Road? What's the business? Prop 209. Where there are no fences that keep out the transients that might climb over the fence into an abandoned lot. I'm driving a 1980 Honda Accord, tan with sheepskin covers, a black bra, louvers along the hatchback. When Ronaldo would fill the back of the car with the 10s or 15s, it would rattle the slats on the dam and shake the windows in the street. An amp, an equalizer. There are girls dancing next to us. Some would call them mud ducks. And once, when one got too close enough to expect a lift, like Demita, he hurled a pizza bucket at her face and screeched off. I am near a pond, and the pond is breathing frogs. A breathing I have not heard before this very moment. The breathing is hard to locate, maybe, like the laughter that begins behind me. The heat in the Berkshires is so different from the heat in Sacramento, and the bugs here attack the body so much so that my calves are snapping back in the heat of the memory of being so bitten. The van is like the moon this morning, flat and low in the air. And it's cold, so freezing in fact that I'm shaking not from the cold, but from the expectation of what I was about to have, even though I saw it only on some video. How I learned to bob my head, to bobble like a good cock-sucking girl. The only rhythm found through this kind of repetition, something that existed so far out of my control, but it was a control I immediately mastered once he let me in. I think I said, "Excuse me." Now let me think. "Excuse me, I've never done this before, but can I suck your dick?" "Excuse me, I've never done this before, but can I suck your dick?" And while asking, I ate from a bag of chocolate kisses and licked my boy lips at the old man, a walking fantasy, bobbling in and out of what felt like a dream. "A young man as handsome as you should be out chasing girls. Where is my friend? Here's my friend. He might look like this guy. We'll have a little play. A young man as handsome as you should be out chasing girls." Let me do this. "A young man as handsome as you should be out chasing girls." A young man like me was out chasing after something out of his reach until that very night in the cooling heat. Chasing after the shift in the car when the old man slides back the curtain in his white van or slips out from the van and then asks me if I want a beer. And I don't remember drinking the beer, only sitting in his front seat and thinking his cock looked like a big button. There's a tray in the car, but I do not recall anything in it, only the stack of what had to be moved before we slipped in the back. I felt out of practice at something I'd never done before, out of practice in what I wanted to do for what seemed forever. Is this what I was waiting for? Once driving from San Diego to Sacramento, somewhere in the grapevine, the bra slipped off the car and slid under it, the drag of it slowing us down, pulling as it caught below the bumper. I don't remember if this was coming or going to Sacramento, but I do remember me, Ronaldo, and my mother in the car, slipping under a bridge, flipping 360 degrees around and ending up safely stopped under a bridge after my brother fell asleep. Somehow we all woke up under the overpass, and I remember laughing. We all laughed as a response to our survival. In the pocket of the van, there is a nail clipper that the old man uses to clean out his ears, which he likes to dig into. When he sees the young boy driving in the parking lot, there's something that he can feed from, something that he takes. Does he want to suck? I do. And there's his underwear, pulled down. And there is his spread of his thin white legs. And he wants to try it. Does he say that? It's hard to sort out that moment because it was so fast. But the smell remains, the smell of sweet beer and dead skin under the nails, blackened. The beard so rough it scrapes across my face, and the space is so small, almost too much so to hold these blockish movements, the hard shifts, and the softness in which I learned to track this smell as a first smell. The pull of it follows me. The soft white body, he is so rushed, and I'm leaning into the sweep of his speed, or I crouch back to let it go by. Does he offer beers? Or I run from them. I watch him explode all over the place, and the cum fountain in the dark in the van feels like this is the site where I'm born. And I move in the van as if in a womb before I break out. You guessed it, into the night. Oh, this would be fun. Let's do a little chanting. I want this side of the room to say, into the night. And I want this side of the room to say, what will you say? We'll say, into your night. into the night, into the night, into the, you guys have to sing. Into your night, into your night, into your night. Stop that laughing, into your night. Join in a party. I'll give you a little music.
What you did on the mountain was suspicious when you stopped. What you did on the mountain was so suspicious when you stopped.
Now whisper it. That's great, I love it. We're gonna meet each other somewhere and whisper. Keep whispering that shit. I'm gonna be like Cookie. Just whisper that shit till you feel it. Into the night, into the night, into your night, into the night, into your night. We're gonna get real intimate in this biatch. We're gonna take Mod 5 to a place it's never been before. We're gonna elevate into the night with one another. It's probably close to 9 p.m. and we're just gonna, I'm gonna take you all the way back into my little fucked up imagination. I want you to be thinking about that into the night, into my night. You're gonna be with me right now. I'm gonna take you along the way with the Belgians. This is an oldie but a goodie. I'm often invited to read this poem at orphanages, brothels like. The Belgians. William the plastic surgeon's bald and tall, and he wears a gingham shirt, and he's thick and full like his lover Patrick, who's in finance. And is also thick and full like him, so it makes sense that they are a couple here at the porch bar, a repetition of fabrics and length and foreign bodies and foreign cocks in America. A man with a mustache is able to pull all of the men in the bar in. What to see out of the light is not clarity, but the popped face that fills the surface of the street you walk out into, and despite not knowing where to go, you are leading. Or maybe you are led like them, all after this intuit, dodging how to think of the split in time, place, and event. Got those categories? Time, place, and event. Do not get ballistic. The blacks are in front of the Marc Jacobs store on Commercial Street. We would think, like their bar makeshift photographer does, that they want to be seen together. Instead, they are attracted to the distance that spreads between them enough so that the name of the designer links them on the bench. Where one sign creates reality, two brothers hitched by class signage, I do hear an accent and feel resentful of their very presence and need some stability. And when Dallas asks, who let them in? Who let them in? And even though I too feel this resentment, I say, they are more beautiful than anyone here in this town. Do I believe this? Into the night, into my night, do I believe this? There's a bird that moves across the sky at an angle. Much like the way that I swim against the current, pushing myself, swimming below the waves, and despite the back hurting and despite the bruise that grows from the fall down the stairs, I'm ready to continue my kick below the torque of the weight of the black men on the street in a pack in a white town. The white girls that slip by have no idea that I paid close to $50 to get to this seat, to get this seat. And I chose air instead of enclosure, but like Drake says, they know, they know, they know. You know, they know, they know, they know. You know, you know, you know. You a pistine, you a pistine, you a pistine. I pistine, you know, I do. With my finger crossed, with my finger holding in the stitches, I thought about the Belgians. Not that I will ever see them again, but I want to call one Prince Patrick, and the other I want to call Lord William. They are so critical of black women's bodies, the shapes growing so wide, but they love Michelle. And their bodies are lean like rocks. Is that why I made the wrong turn? The space between sleep and disaster pulling me down the stairs, the kind of freedom to be thinking in a house next to a sea? Who would have thought this would lead to laceration, the flying pizza laptop in the fall? What does one say and how does one feel the slip between the act of encountering critique and the idea of reaching through the repulsion of such naming, like the black plastic bag that spins below the gray jets that thunder outside my Hilton. How dare I get so classed and pulled over for such speeds down a hill to get to you? They describe themselves as elite. My father would say elite, or above it all, or something that they can't colloquialize. This is a position as tricky as the one they describe as so difficult to maintain in, you know what I'm going to say, the gay world. They don't use that phrase, but like the bruise that grows hard on my hip, we both understand what they mean when they pass for straight around the world. In fact, we are linked by our very shirts. Mine is reasonable. Ted Baker, not as cheap as I thought. I pulled on for the hunt. I usually wear J. Crew. AG. Not what you're thinking. But the blue four tailored down the back to inseams to bring the body back in the shape against that which I gorge. See you later. Bye. Have a good night. You're welcome. That's what happens when you try to leave. You get a goodbye, you get a salutation, you get a pause, you get a caesura. The story stops and then returns. I bought this shirt near the growing Twin Towers. My encounter? What I want to say, leaning out of windows, breathing in the blast. You know, there were days back then when you could get a free air conditioner. Do you remember those days, post 9/11, when you got a free air conditioner? There's soot, or a place where the body slips between class outside of buildings. And in the end, all I think of is what has changed in the erection of the towers that grow below me while I vacate. And that's all for that. I'm gonna read, I'm gonna do one more little thing for you guys.
What you did at my mama was so suspicious. What you did at my mama. Us in one single way, it's a kind of rendering I know. It is da 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 ba ba da 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 Ba da 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 da, ba da 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 da, ba da 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 da, ba da da ba da da, ba da 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 da, ba da 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 da.
I'm gonna read one more poem. If you want to call it a poem, let's call it a treatise. Let's call it a little treat. Let's call and repose with one another. I'm trying to figure out what you want. It is a difficult thing here in your mod 5 room. I haven't played here in years. However, I will tell you this. We're going to end with a little something called rape. It's a little love poem between me and a Gentile vet. Domestic flight, here to chaos.
I was waiting with you. I was sitting there when you were waiting there. I was waiting with you. I was there.
The man next to me on the plane has brown nostril hair that juts out like thin spider legs. He swirls his can of Corona Extra in a circle as though it were the glass of wine I remember in the Napa Valley. Turnbull. It's like, remix. Turnbull. It's free advertisement. Their wine is exquisite. He was a stocky one. The manager we met again down the road at another winery. I can't remember, and now he is swirling his glass on the table, teaching us how to taste the wine right, aggressive. Swirling in a circle the way his wine opens up and fills the air above his face. Breathe, taste. I feel so full of shit. The shit I feel full of has been extracted of liquid, and it feels so hard in me. I drank so much vodka last night, a shot of Belvedere. These men are so fat in front of me. The cab driver last night had halitosis. I hate that stench. So I got dropped off early. I'm looking to get to my panel. It grows without me on it. What comes out of the body, what warps, and where are the intersections yet to be traced? My stomach hurts. What I write has nothing to do with beauty. When my mind bent into my back after someone said that one has to work through it as an option, I thought of Burke. And this is the way I'm doing my, you know what they are, inline citations, borrowed texts. I like to sing them, you know, to let you feel the Edmund Burke. I thought of Burke. Sublimity includes, besides the idea of danger, the idea of power also. Pleasure follows the will, and we are generally affected with it by many things of a force interior to our own, but pain is always inflicted by a power in some way superior. Strength, violence, pain, and terror are therefore ideas which occupy the mind together. That is the truth as it goes. What are the boundaries of trauma? In Burke's notion of the sublime, whether they be intergenerational, specific, or received, and what are the expectations of that trauma in relation to the body as one attempts to capture it? Some artists come to mind whose primary impulse is to feel trauma and to explore its elasticity. Poe Bellsbury's Body Bag, Schemann's Scroll, Dyson's Floating White Plastic. I keep returning to these works as though this is some kind of desire connected to their meaning in a language I might replace with the word torque, torpor, lassitude, lasso, yeehaw, hee-haw. I think somewhere in a poem I write about the field I grew up in between the military houses where I spent part of my childhood, that they are connected to one another by this field. In the middle is a playground. I don't actually think of this playground as fun. In fact, I think of it as a scene of terror, or at least a site of reflection where I could, or maybe I have in the past, rendered the park and its contents as a site of beauty. But in the end, I think it's important to think about the field of all beauty as the site of possibility. But where did the terror hover at the horizon of my play? I remember now writing about the razor in this field and the brown substance collected on its inside edge, and knowing that it was something I wasn't supposed to see, feel, or touch. But for a minute I was alone with that found substance. I would think of this scene as different had I been cut, but the potential of being cut is where the memory becomes most exact. And that I had the wherewithal to not get cut, or to look at it and realize the history of that crud would be injected into what I would recall forever. In the park, I committed assault. At least I think of it that way, if I recall it correctly. Though I was a child of, say, 7, maybe 8. Why did I throw that thick, airless basketball into the white, freckle-faced girl's face? Why did I throw that thick, airless basketball into that white, freckle-faced girl's face? Why did I throw that thick, airless basketball into that white, freckle-faced girl's face? I could say I did it because it was the South. And I was a brown boy there, and then I recall being in the back of an old man's truck going somewhere, maybe given a ride home with a pile of black boys, and even though I felt different, I was one of those black boys ferried to my house up the street from the baseball diamond from which we all were delivered. In Guam, maybe? I rode a bike down a hill and was attacked or crashed and got into some fight with another boy at the base. My parents told me to tell any boy's parents if someone starts a fight with you, or maybe they said that, or I learned how to fight at some point near the origin of that lesson. Offense and defense, or offense as defense, or maybe it didn't matter. I sparred, took judo, and would drill my father on how, would drill with my father on how to break an arm, a face, a spirit. Why did I pick up that ball that was somewhere in the space near where the razor was dug in the earth before I plucked it out? In my hands, the leather bunches in my grip, and what I most recall. I don't know why I did it. In a way, we were becoming friends, this little white freckle-faced girl and me, right there in that park, that I realized was more like an eruption between families, lives drawn together through the tug of the US Navy, and how it brought so many of us who were so different together in that South, that Millington, Tennessee. Maybe I pushed her on the swing. Maybe I was pushing her, or we were talking, and the swing seat was getting closer, the pendulum more wide. I knew it would hurt. I knew that if I picked up that ball and threw it at her face while she swung towards me, it would hurt. I was learning the basics of tennis then, and with the judo and boxing I understood force, or the impact of what it would mean to use momentum in my favor and against the object of impact. It was like throwing, it's hot, it's burning up in here. I understood force, or the impact of what it would mean to use momentum in my favor and against the object of impact. It was like throwing a mass of rubber into a wall. It was like being in a cartoon, so the wastelands of Popeye were my own terrain, and her face was the bulging bomb of Brutus's chest, and it was like leaning into a forehand, a push, and then smack. Whose trauma was that? I mean, when she screamed, or when I screamed, because at some twin moment I broke apart into a kind of hysterical crying too. And ran home from the park to my house where my dad wondered why I was screaming. I must have been hyperventilating when I told him that I threw a ball in that girl's face. Perhaps that sight of shock, the stuttering, the out-of-breath need to communicate, the act of violation was from the same place as when that white man laughed at me and sprayed me with a water hose when I attempted to tell on his son, who attacked me in both cases until I was left heaving. The buzz of the plane around me is insistent. It requires a kind of work to write when it feels like the air is being sucked out of you, and the mountains in the periphery below you reveal the heart of the revelation. Sometimes when I'm cuddling, and I don't know if this had, you know what cuddling is. I hope so. Sometimes when I'm cuddling, oh, it's gone. What happened? There's no more mic, that's it, it's over. She's done. Stick a fork in her. I think it's gone. I'm not one of those people who can do it.
Alright. Ran the battery down. That closed, now we're back where we began, in the buzz. The buzz of the plane around me is insistent. Just gotta handle it. It requires a kind of work to write when it feels like the air is being sucked out of you, and the mountains in the periphery below you reveal the heart of the revelation. Sometimes when I'm cuddling, and I don't know if this has any kind of recombinant relation to sex, or the act of fucking or after fucking, I like to pretend to weep. I sense that maybe this is common. Oh, good idea. Good, perfect, thank you.
We unplugged. There should be no feedback. There's no mic. There's nothing hooked up. This is the only mic.
Not even plugged in.
It's me. I think I give some Magneto energy. Watch it, little microphone. You better behave. It's okay. You have to caress it back into life. It too is an object for our desire. So I'm just going to close with a few, the paragraph or two. I sense that maybe this is common. And this emotion is connected to that feeling, or an inability to speak when filled with terror. So came the fake tears and the faux heaving. There's nothing particularly beautiful about this feeling. In a way, there are the kinds of thoughts that I want to query a dad on a plane who calls me man, but I think that I want to put to him a series of questions. Do you like to weep? Do you weep when you fuck? Do you cry when you fuck? Can I suck your dick until tears flow out of my eyes? This is not crying. Claudia Rankine, in her Don't Let Me Be Lonely, writes about crying, about the division between the emotion of crying and the wetness of the face, as though the two activities are parsed out from one another. One woman, after reading of an excerpt of what I've written here, said, "I was raped 7 times." What was included in the talk? Was it Desaad that triggered this confession? Was there something in the accumulation of scenes that inhabited my imagination that triggered my mind? A face being punished by a cock until tears came, the opening and pounding into this kind of scene, where there is nothing but shutting down. Shut up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ronaldo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Ms. Peck. Thank you, Mr. Callahan. Thank you all for coming. Julie T. Underhill is here from University Press Books. Buy a book. Hang out for a moment and talk to the poets. And come back on the 22nd of October for Chiku Reading. All right. I will see you then, if not before. Thank you again.